Welcome to another edition of Unpluggered as we gear up towards round 8. We spoke last week about needing a response, and we certainly got that. The jury's probably out as to whether we're absolutely back in town. We'll probably need to see it over a sustained period, but it ticked every box that it needed to tick with a 69-point demolition of Hawthorn, a game that appeared over within the first 10 or so minutes. It was very difficult to see that result going any other way than the way it did once that game got going. In fairness, looking at Hawthorn, they're a side that is generally fairly competitive but lacks a bit of class, and they lost a bit of that polish leading into the game with Burgoyne and O'Meara and Wingard out of that side. But in saying that, it was their biggest loss in 4 years, so we obviously did plenty right to smack them around the way we did. It was a ruthless first quarter, and they kept the foot down the whole way through. Everybody that needed a response, guys like Brad Hill especially, and Zach Jones and players like that, gave us that response. Butler found his form again as well, and everything sort of ticked along pretty smoothly. We now play face a crunch game against the Gold Coast Suns to try to square our season away at 4-4 before we get a couple of Marvel Stadium blockbusters against Geelong and the Bulldogs. So the season could go either way from here, but we are alive again, and it feels like there's a little bit of a pulse. Nick, your assessment of that? It was a pretty comfortable watch. I know that hasn't always been the case this year, but you can never be that confident as a St Kilda supporter, but it did seem 10 minutes into the game that there was no way we were going to get beaten in that.
Yeah, it did seem like we were switched on from the get-go. But, I mean, I'm not going to lie. There were flashbacks to, 21 or 22 years ago, 1999 at Waverley against Hawthorn when, they kick a couple in a row and all of a sudden that lead that we have doesn't seem as big or as a mammoth task as it might have a few minutes earlier. Whenever we go out to get out to a decent lead against Hawthorn, I think back to that game. But I think for the first time all season, it really was a full 4-quarter performance from pretty much everybody on the field. There weren't really any passengers, and it was just really good to see us put that together. We won every quarter, which was nice to see, given we'd only won 5 or 6 for the season before that. It was. I would have liked it at some point to have put the foot down, and we could have made that 10 or 11 goal win into a 14, 15 goal win, 100 points, 120 points. I think that was on the cards at times. We were playing that type of footy, but whether we took our foot off the pedal a little bit, or whether Hawthorn worked their way into it. There were some moments when they kicked a couple of goals in a row towards the end of quarters. But like I said, you win all 4 quarters, and you get yourself into that position. It's pretty hard to complain.
H, your assessment of that? Yeah, I must admit, when Hawthorn kicked 2 on half time, and I think we were 43 points up, I thought, geez, it'd be nice if we could kick the first or the third just to avoid any nerves. And I think we did it within a minute, and I'm like, yeah, we'll be all right now. But did you sort of see it as a fairly comfortable watch?
Well, as Nick's saying, it was a 4-quarter effort. And yeah, winning 4 quarters when the previous 6 rounds, I think we'd won 5 quarters for the whole year. It's a complete change in direction when you look at it and thinking, I mean, yes, Hawthorn were missing a number of players and people calling them Box Hill and all that sort of thing, but Clarkson can almost lift any team on any day if he wants. It was all the week before the Adelaide kicked 10 goals against them in a quarter and they still lost.
Yeah.
Any win against Hawthorn is still a reasonable win. And to peg back one of the 3 big defeats we've had with a bit of percentage, get back up to, as we saw, exactly 80%. It's nice to tick one off now. If we just won by 15, 20 points or whatever, you're sort of thinking, okay, we won, but that extra percentage is a very, very helpful thing going forward.
Yeah, we need a couple of those beltings, and as Nick said, obviously a 100-point win would have been nice to really eat into that. But at least we're down 3 floggings. We're now down 2. But yeah, it depends which way you want to look at it. You could sort of say, well, we could have been, competitive in those games and then gained percentage here. But we've got to work with what we can work with at the moment. And yeah, Hawthorn's 2 wins this year. They were 41 points down in one of them and 32 points down in the other. So there was always that little nerve. But I just felt that they were probably lacking the polish, and our effort was good. I mean, that smother from Brad Hill's one of the highlights of the season. You want to see players do that sort of thing. Jack Higgins is having a low-key, pretty good season. He's kicked multiple goals in every game. I think he's kicked 14 in 7 matches or thereabouts, and kicked 4 in the second half. So yeah, I think he's been a pretty sound investment. So that was pleasing. Max King again taking some good marks, but we just got to get him to straighten up. 2 goals, 4 from him. And yeah, it was good. I know we'll get to the votes later, but it's probably the first time since round 1 that Jack Steele hasn't been in the best 3, which is he was still good. He played a very solid game, but it's a great position to at least have others that are stepping up and taking that mantle. Guys like Clark and Caulfield are sort of getting better as the season goes along. So really important game this week, which we'll preview a bit later on. But Nick, it gives us the chance, if we can win this game, just to get back on an even keel at 4-4, and you feel that you're kind of in control of your own season a bit more after that.
It's hugely important. I mean, obviously every win is important, but right now we're coming off the back of a pretty decent win over Hawthorn, and if nothing else, then this week gives us the opportunity to get back to 50-50, an even record, and the following week we have an opportunity to get in the positive win-loss record. So it's a massive game. Aside from the fact that we play pretty well up in Queensland, we spent a fair bit of time there last year, as everybody knows, and you've heard a few of the guys this week talk about going back to their second home, up north, which is fun. And it seems like they like playing up there. They know the ground pretty well. They play the ground fairly well. So it's a hugely important game for us. I think in terms of getting our season back on track, but also to be able to build that confidence from a decent win this week. We're playing from a fair way back after a few of those disappointing losses earlier in the year. So it's a massive game.
And basically, I think we look back now as probably the biggest inclusion to the team, Paddy Ryder. The difference he made last week. I mean, he only had 7 touches. We're seeing a lot of these ruckmen running around getting 20, 25 touches these days. But 35 hit-outs, which I don't know what percentage of them went to our advantage. I mean, that one tap that he put down Steele's throat and he ran straight out of the centre, you just look at it and going, how much we have missed that.
He's a master.
Just that first usage is such a big thing in any game. I mean, if he's giving us that sort of service every week, you win more games than you lose.
And we got the benefit of Marshall going forward and kicking 2 set shot goals by being able to start forward with Ryder in the ruck. So he's giving us an armchair right in the middle, and Marshall can be dangerous in other areas. So yeah, the partnership of those two, it makes an enormous difference to our team.
Yeah, it really does make an enormous difference. I stand by the fact, and we've discussed on previous shows, that I think Rowan Marshall is the most important player and most valuable player to the way that we want to play and to our game style and to our structure. But what Paddy Ryder allows him to do around the ground and up forward, and even playing dropping behind the ball if we need him to, Paddy Ryder is elite at his craft, and the ruck contest. There is very few ruckmen in the competition ever, I think, that are a lot better than Paddy. There might be some that are a little bit better, but there's very few. He's an elite cap ruckman, and the advantage that he gives our midfielders, first use of the ball at a ruck contest is immense, and allowing Rowan Marshall to spend time forward, and whether he can contest the ball in the air and take a mark and kick a goal, or whether he brings the ball to ground and gives the likes of Butler and Higgins a chance to win the ball at ground level. It's hugely important.
Yeah, Paddy Ryder playing in any of our grand finals in 97, 09 and 10 is probably the difference in all of those games, I would think.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I've just found that looking at what he did on the weekend, he won 67% of the contests he went to, which is elite, and 37% of those were to advantage, which is well above average. So it just shows basically, if you get a ruckman in like that, he probably takes 2/3 of the contests in the middle, with Marshall being down forward in those other times. So it's come back first game. He's not completely match fit yet, but if he moves on from there and gives us that sort of service and gets better as the year goes on, we're very well placed.
Yeah, cohesion between ruck and midfield important too, because obviously we've spoken about it a number of times that Brodie Grundy's continuing to dominate the ruck, but getting no link up with his midfield whatsoever. Whereas we saw with Ryder and in the times Marshall was in there that we did too. And our next guest we'll hear from shortly, Justin Koschitzke, probably some similarities to Rowan Marshall in the sense that they were probably noted as being better forwards, but spent a fair bit of time in the ruck, and they're probably at their best when they're combining both of those roles with another genuine ruckman, as is the case with Marshall. So we'll chat to Cozzy about his time in the ruck and a few other things, obviously with a fairly eventful career. A little bit later on. Again, a lot of players played pretty well out of that game on Saturday. In fact, there was probably hardly a passenger, even guys that we've been a bit critical of, like Dara Joyce did a few good things and certainly did a job. And I must admit, I felt bad because when I first saw him get the footy, I actually forgot he was playing. I thought he'd been dropped in the week leading up to the game. But when he was still there, I thought, okay, he's going okay. But won't quite get a vote. But Nick, where did you put your 3-2-1 out of the Hawthorn game?
Yeah, I found the votes quite tough this week. There are a few guys that I wanted to give an honourable mention to. Jack Higgins, I thought was very impressive up forward. One thing that I hadn't really noticed before was how strong he is in the air and how strong he is in general. But it seems like the playing group has real trust to kick to Jack Higgins in the air and allow him to contest the mark and not just contest at ground level. But there are a few times on the weekend that it looked like they weren't just kicking it to him as a spot up lead, but they're also kicking it to him in a contest and allowing him to fight for that ball in the air. The other honourable mention, Brad Crouch, I think it was probably his best game for the club in his short time. He was just a bull in the middle and at the contest, and very hard to move off the ball in clearance situations. But one vote I gave to Jack Sinclair. I thought the way that he moved the ball, his positioning across half back, and the way that he moved through the middle of the ground, through the wing, and delivered the ball up forward was very impressive, and probably his best game for the year so far. Difficult to split the 2 and the 3 votes, but I think ultimately go with the consensus, I think. But Brad Hill, finally showed what he's capable of on the offensive side of the ball. The way that he ran and burst through the middle once he'd won possession, was really dynamic. And his delivery to leading forwards was immense. But not just that, but his work rate around the ground, his chasing and tackling, his defensive pressure when he didn't have the ball, and when Hawthorn forwards and wingers had the ball was very, very good. We've all seen that the smother in the first quarter. I think it really set the tone for Hill and how he has to go about it, and the way I think that all the boys got around him after that smother was kind of indicative of how important he is to the way that we want to play. And Zach Jones, with the Silk Miller medalist, he was, in my eyes, clearly the best player on the ground. 37 touches, kicked a couple of goals. He was everywhere. Never stopped running for 4 quarters. Was clearly the best on ground. So 3 votes for Zach Jones.
H, your 3-2-1.
Yeah, sometimes I think you need to give down a 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. It can be really, really rough some weeks.
Hard in some of those other games.
Some weeks you can give 1 vote and that'll be it. One I've actually given to Jack Bytel. He has to be a permanent figure in the team now.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way he should be dropped. Leading clearances, leading tackles. So he's in there doing the stuff in the middle as a young kid, and he's doing it well. That position should not be changed for the rest of the season. He cannot be dropped. If he has an off day, so be it.
Yep. I
Keep
said that last
their
week.
game experience is what is going to make him the great player he could be, because there's so much potential there going ahead. So gave him the 1, and 2 to Brad Hill. As I was saying, first quarter, you're thinking, wow, this is what we expected. This is the football that we thought we're bringing across. I think he spoke to, or had a message from Nicky Wimar during the week or something saying, just keep your eye out, keep out of the media or whatever. Don't listen to anything. Go out and play your own game. That's basically what he told him, and that's exactly what he did. He showed us that, yep, this is what I can do. And if we can get that week in, week out, that would be fantastic. So, and 3, Zach Jones, clearly best on ground. Couple of great goals, ball on a string. It was, just great to watch someone, and found it weird not giving Jack Steele any votes.
Yeah, I loved Vitel's game. There was a couple of blind turns in the middle, and just some of the poise that he had. We saw that against West Coast as well, and we've got guys that, with all due respect, have been sort of journeymen on the list that are solid players, but they can't do that. And he's already sort of showing that, he's got tricks that other players don't have. So you just got to keep persevering with him. He's a very good player. I thought Ryan Burns was good too. He looked a bit, in his first game last year against Adelaide, sort of a bit out of his depth slightly, but he was very comfortable this time in his second game, 18 possessions and 9 marks. So he was pretty solid. A lot of apologies. So Jack Steele's certainly an apology. He was a good enough player to be around the mark. I thought Ross was good. I thought Crouch was good. Higgins good. Bytel good. But I gave 1 vote to Hunter Clark. Kicked 2 tremendous goals, but had up, high 20s in possessions, used the ball well, showed that poise that we're used to seeing from him. 2 votes to Brad Hill. Yeah, the run and carry, a couple of times where he took them on through the middle with pace, and what you really want to see him doing with that work rate. And Zach Jones, I mean, he had 24 in the first half, finished with 37. He set the game up completely. So, of our 2 of our new recruits from last year, Jones and Hill played probably their best games for the club. Jack Higgins probably played his best game for the club as well, and Butler would have been close. So it was good to get that out of those new recruits. So really strong performance from those guys. So, for me, 1 Clark, 2 Hill, and 3 to Zach Jones. So
Hunter Clark, where do you guys see his best position? I mean, I think over the course of his career so far, his best footy has been played across halfback on the wing. I think we all love to see him in the middle, and the idea of, in a year or two, partnering Hunter Clark with Jack Bytel and some of those other guys in the middle of the ground is really tantalising. But I'm not sure that his best position is in the middle anymore, and it could be that his best football will come from halfback or on a wing.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good dilemma potentially to have, one of those ones where you've got multiple layers and multiple options. It was good to see Nick Caulfield go forward and kick a goal. The only other goal he's kicked in his career was in his first game. So first game against the Crows a few years ago, and then a goal here in this one. So that was all fairly pleasing, and I can't imagine there'd be too many changes, but we'll get to that shortly. Our special guest played exactly 200 games for the Saints. That is Justin Koschitzke.
Kicks to the hot spot, Gehrig the target. Oh, Koschitzke from the side. The run provided by Del Santo. Goes down the middle, the target, Koschitzke, strong hands. Gehrig, tight angle, no support. Handballs to space. Goal. Oh, what a goal that is! Brilliant by Koschitzke. That pendulum swinging back St Kilda's way. Now can Koschitzke mark inside 50? He can!
Well, our next guest, we reflect back on the end of the year 2000. St Kilda were in a really difficult spot, having just won the Wooden Spoon. They signed Malcolm Blight as head coach. They recruited the likes of Fraser Gehrig and Aaron Hamill, and they had picks 1 and 2 in the draft. They would take Nick Riewoldt and Justin Koschitzke, who were quickly dubbed as the Twin Towers. Justin Koschitzke would win a Rising Star Award in his first season in 2001, but it would be a pretty eventful year with the departure of Malcolm Blight and various other things happening over the course of that year. But it was a great journey through exactly 200 games for the club, and Cosy joins us. Nice to catch up with you again, mate.
Lads, thanks for having me.
Now, that first year, so you've arrived at the club from Brocklesby. Can you take us through what that year was like? You played in defence, where you obviously worked your way through and won the Rising Star in your debut season, but there'd be a coaching change. The other of the early recruits, Nick Riewoldt, would miss most of the year with injury, but can you take us through that start? It was pretty eventful.
Yeah, it was pretty eventful. It was a bit of a whirlwind and a baptism of fire to go to an AFL club and have Malcolm Blight, that we thought was the messiah of coaching, and to have Fraser come from the Eagles and Aaron Hamill come from Carlton, two very successful clubs in the 90s. And we were really, like, looking back on it, really blessed to have two mentors like that to teach us how to compete and, teach us how to go about it. So, and they're still great mentors today, those blokes. But I think the name escapes me, Nesty. Tim Elliott broke his collarbone in round 2 of that year, and I played in the 2s that week, and I got my start in the 1s and round 3, and Malcolm Blight chucked me at centre half back and never played in the back line in my life, and things just unfolded from there.
Cosy, what was the draft process like for you? Obviously, you and Nick Riewoldt were the two consensus best key forwards or key position players in the draft. What was that process like for you? And had you spoken to the club? Did you know that they were going to take you with pick 2? What had the club told you before draft day?
No, they didn't tell us much right up to it. I was pretty oblivious to it, mate. I was playing at the Murray Bushrangers, and I was just cruising around and happy to be getting a game. And it probably wasn't until after the draft camp that the Saints let us know. And I think about 10 days before, Brian Waldron and John Beveridge drove up to the farm. They did an 800k round trip. Mum cooked them a roast, and they sat at the kitchen bench. They gave me the St Kilda jumper and said, "We're going to take you. We're going to take you and Nick number 1 and 2." And that was a week before, but they swore us to death, and we couldn't tell anybody. And that was it. But we offered them a bed that night. I remember Mum and Dad offering them a bed, but they drove back to Melbourne. They were there probably an hour, and said, "We're going to take her," and off they went back.
Now, you played most games of the first season, so you basically came in round 3 and then played the entire season after that. Only 3 wins, so obviously it was a pretty lean season for the club. But at the end of the season, you came up against Hawthorn finals bound, managed to pip them right after the siren. It was a team. Yeah, I was going to say the team was basically half the side was missing with injuries. How big was that win for the club and going forward from there on?
Yeah, look, it was pretty huge. Obviously, Tomo had taken over after about round 14 or 15, and we got smacked around. And then to come up against the Hawks at the G, it's a bit vague now, mate. It's 20 years ago. Hawley kicked the goal after the siren, and it was I think it was just reward for Tomo and what he was trying to build and the group that he was bringing forward. And I think it was well known that Hawley was on his way out and he wouldn't be there anymore the following year. And it sort of, I suppose, instilled that we could mix it with the big boys, and went into the pre-season 2003 and started a campaign that launched us into, prelim finals in 04 and 5 and on the road to a pretty culturally sound club.
You had some injuries over the course of your career. The first significant one was, I think, a back setback in your second year in 02 after you'd played some early rounds. Can you take us through that? I imagine you're probably still growing at that stage, which would make a back injury a pretty significant issue, but that saw you miss the majority of 2002.
Yeah, I think when I got there, I was 6'5" and not very heavy. They used to chuck me up to see which way the wind was blowing, and I think after that year, just a huge workload, 20 senior games as a young kid with not much physical development really. So 2002, I really focused on putting some weight on and being able to mix. I remember I knew we were going to play Carlton in round 1 in 2002, and Tomo said, you're going to be at centre half back. So I knew Lance Whitnell was one of the premier forwards in the league, and I really set myself the whole pre-season just to put some weight on and be able to physically mix it with the likes of Lance Franklin. But I think I took it too far and put maybe 8 or 9 kilos on that pre-season, and then didn't work on my core, and my back started failing me, and by round 4, I couldn't bend over to pick up the ball, and got diagnosed with a stress fracture, and then ended up missing that whole year after that, round 4. So, yeah, it was a good learning curve.
You mentioned coming to the club, obviously with the coaching messiah, as you said, Malcolm Blight, and then Tomo takes over, 3/4 of the way through the season. What was that transition like for the playing group, and what was that like for you personally?
Look, I was a really ignorant 18-year-old kid. I didn't really understand what it took to be an AFL coach or a mentor. I can remember getting the phone call when Blighty got the sack, and my first initial thoughts was, can't believe what this club's doing. They've just gone and spent a couple of $1 million on a coach that's going to, lead us out of the dark ages and do this, and they've sacked him. So it's a bit of a blur. I didn't really understand. Tomo took over, and the rest is history, and it's obviously the right decision was made.
So, yeah, as you're saying, Tomo came in and started winning reasonable amounts of games. 2003 finished off with a really good run, won 5 of the last 7 matches of the season, and basically just missed out in finals, and then launch into 2004 and win the preseason cup, then basically reverse those 4 teams, play them again, win those 4, but finish up with 10 straight to start the season. How was the feeling at the club at that point, thinking, okay, we're sitting top 10 from 10? Where were you, where were you looking towards, going, is it just still 1 week at a time? We're still going, we're definitely not where we want to be yet? Or were you sort of thinking, okay, look, we are the best out there at the moment, and everyone else can chase us?
Look, I think we would have been pretty excited and knowing that we could mix it with the best. But going back when Tomo took over, he's a genius at I think judging character, and he really built the culture of that place. And he went out and Hawley left and Spider Everett left, and arguably probably the Saints' best 2 players at the time. But he knew that he needed to build again, and went and recruited the likes of that draft's phenomenal. Del Santo, Montagna, Ball, Xavier Clark, Joey. I said Joey. Who else was in that?
Bruce McGuire, I think.
Yeah, and then Goddard the next year, and he just sort of added really good people with values and morals, and a little bit of spunk about them too. So we went into that 04 campaign. I think we probably exceeded our own expectations by being 10-0, but knew we could mix it with the best. And what happened that year? Brisbane smacked us in the final up there, I think.
Yeah. Then you lost the Port in the prelim by a kick, yeah.
Right. So, I think it was lambs to the slaughter. I think the Brisbane were a season campaign with all their aging list, and we went up there pretty cocky, and we're going to win a first final, and they smacked us around. So, and then the prelim comes along, we lose by a goal, and we lick our wounds.
Now, for most of your career, so a lot of people noted you for playing key forward and as that sort of foil in the front half, but you obviously played back early in your career. You spent a lot of time in the ruck. One of the great periods of your career was that purple patch in 05, where you played as a ruck forward, got 11 Brownlow votes in 4 games. You went into the ruck in the 2010 grand final as well, which was really important. In terms of how you assess your own career and positions, did you always want to play forward? Did you embrace playing in the ruck? Could you have settled down back perhaps for more of your career? How did you sort of assess where you felt you played your best footy and maybe where you wanted to play?
I think I was fortunate. I had a few strings to my bow and it probably kept getting me a game that I could play in a number of positions. I sort of was never a 200 centimetre ruckman. I was never really a key forward, that explosive full forward, and I was never really a bona fide backman. Probably too smart and clever to be a bona fide punching backman, but I think I played my best footy when there was a mixture of both, to play forward and pinch hit in the ruck. And you mentioned that period, but it's playing as a key forward can be a lonely position. Sometimes the opportunities don't come your way, and you might run 13, 14 Ks a game and touch the ball 10 times and not get too many opportunities. So I was fortunate enough to be able to pinch hit as that second ruckman, but I definitely think my best footy was as a forward pinch hitting ruckman. So I don't know what you want to call that, boys. Whatever you want.
That's almost the modern ruck, isn't it? It's like, you look at guys like Brodie Grundy and Max Gawn, guys that can contest the ruck contest and then get around the ground and impact on the scoreboard, isn't it?
They blokes are bona fide. They're 200 centimetre big bulls that play in the ruck, and now they've just adopted to be rovers. We weren't that skillful in our day.
Talk about that 4-week period, and Rui had just gotten injured for the second time, and you moved into the ruck, and I think you kicked 16 goals in 4 weeks, playing as a hybrid ruck forward. What was it that clicked for you during that period that made you so dominant?
I remember sitting down with Tomo and having a chat, and Rui had gone down, and he called me in the office and he said, "I'm going to make you captain." And I didn't know where to look. I thought he was taking the piss and thought he was having a laugh, but he said, "No, you're going to be captain over this next period, and I want you to lead the team the way you want to lead it, and do what you want." So I feel an immense responsibility to go out and do that. And, it's almost like everything else got put first and not my own form. So I just had to do what I had to do, and that happened. And then, unfortunately, that run came to an end over at Freo when I did my quad and then missed the finals. And, and then 2006 was a real disaster. So, that got stopped, and I'm really proud of the way that I fought back after 2006 to come back and play some footy. But I suppose that doesn't answer your question. But I just felt responsibility that I had to look after the lads.
You mentioned a captaincy and GT, and he had the rotating captain's policy. And under that, as a player, how did you find changing from one to another from season to season? And did you feel that as one step back, they still were a leader and you were able to go to them still and as a leader of the team?
Yeah, so that was the whole philosophy of it, that someone could step up and have the responsibility, and then the next year they wouldn't change as a person or the player. I'm not sure if it was the right or the wrong thing, but had the chance to play under some great guys. I think Hamill might have been the first one. Hamill, Lenny, Rui, Luke Ball, 2006. And then Rossi came in 2007 and said, "Fuck that. We're just going for the best player and the best leader." So, I don't know. I suppose it had its merits, but, it created ownership for everybody ownership that everybody could be responsible for the team and the leadership group, and did its job.
You spoke about 06 being a disaster. We generally obviously tend to prefer talking about the positives, but it is part of the journey. I'm sure you've been asked about it 1,000 times, and I don't know how you go watching it when you see it, but the GN Syracuse incident, the TV interview with David Schwartz, and obviously playing out the latter stages of the year in a helmet. When you reflect on that journey and how tough that little period was, what are your overriding memories? That you probably might not have a lot of the actual incidents themselves.
Yeah, very tough period. I was really underdone. I think at the end of 2005, I tore my quad leading up to the finals, and then I had a serious patella operation at the end of 5. So 6, the pre-season was really interrupted. So I felt underdone coming in. I hadn't played any footy, seniors or reserves, and was straight into the seniors in round whatever it was against the Dogs, and wasn't travelling the best. Obviously got knocked out, and all the fiasco that preceded that incident. Coming back was a huge mistake that year. I made a decision with my heart and not my head to say, listen, toughen up, mate. The boys are going to play finals and you got to get in there and help them out. But, in hindsight, I certainly would have taken that time off to get that injury right and get going for the next year. So it was a pretty scary period coming back and playing those last couple of rounds. And then I think we might have played a final and got knocked out against Melbourne, 06.
Yeah.
It was a pretty bad time, and it wasn't enjoyable playing footy. It was pretty scary sort of period. So anyway, we can move on.
How do you think that injury in particular and that season impacted the rest of your career after it?
I certainly changed the way I played. I certainly changed the way I thought about footy. But in saying that, I probably had my best years in 2009 and 2010, I reckon, consistently. So it certainly changed the way I played and the way I thought about it and the way I prepared. But yeah, it was definitely a crossroad in my career, and who knows where it would have gone. But Rossi came along 2007, and we had a really good chat, and he resurrected me as a player and a person, and he mentored me through that period and said I had a lot to offer. And as I said, I think consistency wise, 2009 and 10 were probably as good as I got.
Yeah, so 2008, G-Train eventually retires, so we sort of need a bit more key forwards between yourself and Roo. And do you feel like once G-Train had gone, you sort of go, okay, I'm taking a bit more responsibility here, and it just all of a sudden clicked between the two of you, and it just sort of everything worked, and if it wasn't you firing, Nick would be firing, or it just the two of you really worked well together up forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the first time I really played as a key forward or a permanent key forward. And Roo was at the height of his game. And, my instructions was to stay out of his way and dummy lead and, do all that sort of stuff. So, but we had great fun. I think G-Train, didn't he come back?
Briefly, start of 08, played about 4 games, yeah.
So he retired in 7, did he? And then
the end of 7, then came out of retirement and then retired again about round 8 of the next year. Yeah.
So then 08 and then I think 09. Roo and I played as permanent key forwards. I don't think I went once in the centre bouts in 09, so that was sort of a change as well to sort of get a bit of continuity with him and do what we did.
We've spoken to about 14 members of those grand final teams, I'd say, from 09-10 now. I guess we ask similar questions. When you reflect back on that era and those missed opportunities, is it one where you reflect on it with pride that, geez, we were a good side, we gave it everything, we were right there? Or is there just that little bit of frustration that pops in every now and then that, geez, we played well, but we just didn't quite have it go our way?
Well, I think you can answer that, mate. There's a lot of times when the frustration pops in and things didn't go our way. 09, and anyone can argue to the cows come home that I think we were the best side in 09, won 9 in a row, and then a couple of finals to get in, and I think maybe a second quarter when we kicked something stupid. We should have been a long way in front at half time, and it went down the wire, and that was a war of attrition, that game. Like at the time, it was in the wet against Geelong, two mature sides. 126 to 120 tackles or something. It was a world record at the time. It was a brutal game. It was huge, and to lose that certainly hurt. And then, but the pride and the effort that it took to get back in 2010, and limp into the top four, get through. What happened? I think we beat Geelong. No, we beat Geelong and then got straight in the prelim against the Bulldogs. Geelong and Collingwood had to play against each other in prelim. They were probably the two best sides that year, and we copped Collingwood, and 26 points down at half time in that grand final, and Gardy had gone down with a hamstring injury just before half time, so we were ruckman down and throw the kitchen sink at him in that second half, and to come up with a draw. Obviously it hurts, you can't get any closer, but as time goes by, you're proud to play in it. You're playing for 100,000 people and the nation watching, and it's a drawn grand finals. It's a pretty big deal in history, and I'm happy to be involved in it. Obviously it's bitter not to win it.
Talking about that 2010 drawn grand final, obviously Gardner goes down in the first half, 26 points down at half time. What was the messaging from Ross at half time in within the squad? And what are your memories of that kind of the break between the halves and coming out for the third quarter?
I can't really remember much of a message from Ross, but I certainly remember Roo getting us together in the locker room and saying, that this side has been together. The majority of the side have been together for 8, 9, 10 years, and we'd been through too much, and we'd worked too hard to go and lose another grand final. So he said, take the scoreboard out of it, take the time clock out of it, just play minute by minute, and let's throw everything at them and just see where we end up. And, we went out there and chipped away, and BJ takes that mark and put us up, and we thought we were over the line, but it didn't happen. Gardy going down probably hurt us a little bit, with Darren Jolly being a pretty dominant force that game, and I can't really remember much about what Rossi said, but I just remember Rui saying that. He said one thing, that if there's anybody in this room that doesn't believe we can win, don't follow me out right now. And that sort of just distilled in everybody that we can do it.
And the following week yourself, how were you feeling going into the following week? Did you feel as good as the week before? Did you feel like, have to go through this again? Does it feel like it was too much ahead? Obviously you didn't have to go to a parade and all that sort of stuff, but did you keep the same routine as the week before?
It was pretty hard to keep a routine. We didn't have many training. I think we were pretty battered and bruised. A lot of busted ankles, so I didn't train that week. No parade. It was a pretty low-key affair. We sort of went in thinking that if we gave the same effort, we'd sort of get a similar result. We'd be in the game, but it was, looking back on it, we probably weren't much of a chance.
Yeah, that's a perception from a few. The latter stages of your career, as we transition from Ross Lyon into Scott Watters, as you know, we're a fairly honest and unfiltered sort of situation. Your relationship with your last coach, Scott Watters, and the club's relationship with him, and it appears from the outside that could be summed up with you being used as a sub in your 200th and last game, which seemed a little bit disrespectful, at least from a supporter's point of view. How did you reflect on that?
Oh, yeah, look, yeah, Scott had a big job to do. I think the list was probably fading a little bit. He didn't have much coming up from the bottom, and we weren't going that well. But I don't disgruntle. Don't disgruntle what happened with that. I was pretty underdone. I knew that my time was done, and it was a pretty mutual decision. I couldn't go again, and I was disappointed with the sub in the last game, but I'm probably lucky to get a game considering the position I was in.
Now we can tell the respect and the admiration that you have for Ross Lyon, your former coach, and I've heard a bit of a whisper that you do a pretty decent Ross Lyon impression. Can you give us a bit of Ross Lyon?
Not tonight. That's for special occasions, boys. Last time I did it, Rossi was straight on the phone. It was like, I'm not going to put it out there again yet.
We don't know if he listens, so. But yeah, in that last game, still, did you go and find the umpire after the game or the video umpire and say, "Come on, what are you doing to me?" What the video replay that was called back after the ball had almost been bounced in the center again, and everyone I think was already sitting back down and ready to go again, and we go, "What's happening here?" So it took a little bit away, but yeah.
It didn't really matter because I celebrated. I got to celebrate, and the boys got around me, and to tell you the truth, I saw it shade the post, but I thought I'd kick. I think I'd kicked 3 points before that, and I thought that's good enough. I'm going up, so I just got around it, and another day it would have been a goal, but they'd brought the review in.
I think we were about 70 up at the time, so it seemed a bit inconsequential to review it. But the last one from me, I guess, what are you up to these days? I know you dabbled in a bit of media. I think you're back in the country doing sort of bits and pieces like that. You seem to be the type of player that would drift off into retirement, and I think enjoy that pretty well. That the fact that you're maybe not in the limelight as much anymore wouldn't bother you all that much, and you enjoy sort of relaxing a bit.
Yeah, no, I've certainly. I spent a couple of years out of footy when I retired and moved up to northern New South Wales and had the opportunity to work at the Suns in 2019 and 20, and really enjoyed that. Love working with the young kids and the development side of stuff, and going out with a coffee with them and seeing how it's going. And then COVID hit. And like so many other blokes, sort of lost the role with the salary cap and the footy department getting sliced. So I'm still up here. I'm still in northern New South Wales. I'm working for a pool builder, believe it or not. But just doing that. I'm doing a counselling degree. So which is probably harder than playing footy, trying to study online, but. Once that is, I really want to get back into the AFL scene in the mental health side of things, and I really love what St Kilda's doing with the Danny Frawley Centre, and and the olive branch has been cast out there for me to come back in some capacity. So hopefully back at the Saints and working with those sort of that sort of institution.
Cosy, last one from me, mate. Obviously, 200-game career. You're a top number 2 draft pick. You took over the number 23 from a club legend in Stewie Lowe. How do you look back on your career at St Kilda, and what's your relationship with the club like these days?
I look back on it with really fond memories. There's some ups and downs, and you built some lifelong friends and great memories, and the relationship with the footy club's fantastic. The Saints are playing up here on Saturday, and I'll go along and support them and go down the rooms and see them, and all the trainers are the same, and the medicos and whatever the playing group changes. But I feel like I'm at home. I was down in Moorabbin last year, and you walk in there and it feels like home. So. I love the place, and I really feel welcomed when I go there. And a lot of players in my area have got things to do with the club. Joey and Rue I think Nicky Dale looks after the academy, and there's a lot of past players involved, which wasn't around when I was there. There wasn't too many past players involved, so it's good to have our era back involved in the club.
Just the last one, first season 2001. Towards the end of the season, the club decided to sell off the jumper and wear a yellow jumper and against Carlton one day. And one memory I have is driving home, and an 18-year-old Justin Koschitzke comes onto the radio and talking to Triple M, I'm pretty sure it was, and they described, how'd you feel playing in the jumper? Do you remember what you described it as?
No, surprised me.
To paraphrase it, you said we look like a bunch of canaries.
Did I?
So it's something that stuck with me for a long time. So yeah, just that country kid coming through. It was great to hear, and it was just a little bit of something that popped up, and I was like, yeah, I remember that, and
probably get a bloody fine for saying that sort of thing now, would you?
Most likely, probably.
I reckon you would. Cozzy, thanks for joining us. Good luck watching that young Jacob running around as well, too. Obviously, he's going pretty nicely in his early days at the Hawks, so with a Rising Star nomination of his own with 5 goals last week. But you were a ripper for us, 200 games over the journey. It was an eventful career, one that we got so very, very close to climbing the mountain a couple of times, and you're one of the major reasons why that happened. So good luck with everything, and you hope to see you back in footy. It's always been good to work with you over the years.
All right, lads. Good on you.
Yeah, the last month has been a slight roller coaster with everything that we've done, and really to sort of change our model with our team balance and the way that we played today was a snapshot of what we're capable of and what we want to try and achieve. Now we're not going to get it all the time, but that was really pleasing. Our work defensively, were hard to score against. Around the contest, we're tough and hard, and then with our offense, we look potent again, and to have 30-odd shots at goals are, really good indicator for us that, how well it went. But the pleasing part too was, probably over the last month, there's been players trying to maybe fix it themselves, but tonight was all about, the work they did for each other and tried to make their teammate a better player, and I think that really stood out.
Justin Koschitzke there, and the thoughts of a happier Brett Ratton after the third win of the season keeps us on track. We look to the Gold Coast in terms of changes. There's probably not a lot to read into it. Loney and Dunstan played very well at the next level down. I think they had 50-odd touches and six or seven goals between them. I think that Mackenzie will be available, obviously, after that suspension. James Frawley got through the game. Carlisle obviously coming back from that little back issue, but I imagine the changes would be fairly minimal at this point. It's a case of just getting the matchups right. So the Gold Coast have sort of found one with that young Corbett to play alongside Ben King in the forward line. Obviously, that they don't have a specialist ruckman. They're getting smashed in that area, but going all right in the middle. But I look at last year when we only beat them by 4 points. Paddy Ryder was actually beaten that day by Witts in the ruck. So without Witts there, hopefully Ryder and Marshall can have a bit of a field day and give us first use. But Nick, I can't imagine there'd be too many changes. And Sandringham for the second week in a row gave up an enormous lead within the running to get beaten.
Yeah, it must be a bit concerning for Sandy having given up twice now, 4 or 5 goal leads. Through the second and third quarters. But yeah, I mean, it's from all reports, it sounds like our listed guys got through pretty much unscathed. James Frawley got through his first game and was pretty handy. Tommy Highmore, 14 marks, 30 touches. I think 9 of those marks came in the first half when Sandy was flying. But now is kind of the perfect time to bring him in. He's just had a very, very good game in the twos, so confidence should be high. He's proven that he's better than that level, and now it's kind of time for him to kind of get his spot in the team. And I think I think he should come in for Dara Joyce, and there's nothing against Dara Joyce. He didn't put a foot wrong last week or over the last few weeks. He was pretty solid, but I think Tom Highmore has a bigger upside, and he's young, he's fit, he's enthusiastic. He does his role. He hasn't done anything wrong. I don't think he deserved to come out of the team after round one when we dropped him. I think he comes in and like I said, it's nothing negative against Dara Joyce. I just think the upside is higher for Tom Highmore. I think Dan McKenzie will be spoken about. It seems like he's got the trust of the coaching staff and Rats and the boys as well in that kind of small defensive role, without Patton and Geary, and sometimes they push him forward for some defensive pressure up forward. But it's a really hard one coming from a game where you've had such a dominant performance. And you look at Gold Coast and they're missing a few of their prime movers in Jared Witts in the ruck, and Matt Rowell, who's their best player. He's only played 8 minutes of football, but he's clearly their best player and their impact player in the middle. But they've still got some really workmanlike, blue collar, hard workers in the middle of the ground. You look at Tuke Miller and Hugh Greenwood and Brandon Ellis, and they run hard, they work hard, they chase and they tackle. And if we don't bring the same intensity, if we don't bring the same energy and the same defensive pressure and work rate as we did against Hawthorn, then they could very well roll us.
Yeah, they haven't had a bad game at Metricon for a while. They play the ground very well up there. They've struggled a bit on the road, as young sides do, but even this year, so that they belted North at Metricon, which you'd expect. They flogged Sydney a couple of weeks ago, and I think they lost to Carlton by 10 points or something, which they didn't play that well. They got fairly well outplayed in that game, but they are fairly resilient at home. I can't remember the last time they had a genuine stinker on their own home deck, so we've got to be pretty careful. And H, I think the last 4 times we've played the Gold Coast, we've won by a point, 2 points, 4 points, and 4 points or something like that. So if it's close, touch wood, I hope it doesn't happen that way. But if it's close, we're probably due for a bad luck result. But there's no reason why that should be the case. But hopefully we can, if we do get him, we can do it a bit more comfortably.
Yeah, I don't know whether we're kind of traveling along a similar path at the moment as them. We just seem to be very level pegged with them over the last few years, and it always just seems to be a very close contest. Like you think back to a couple of years ago, then Gresham having the win it from the boundary, and then fighting to get over the top of them up in Townsville, and just some of these results, we've pulled the win out last minute possibles just to get over the line, and they're definitely not going to be pushovers. That's an absolute certainty. So we got to be on the ball from the first bounce, because we've been up there a couple of times where it's been pretty ugly, and we go back like 5-6 years. I can't remember, it was about maybe 2014, and we had a reasonable siding with some aging stars, but we got absolutely annihilated, and it just didn't even look like getting close to them. So we know they can. They've got a couple of more seasoned players since last year with Ellis and Greenwood's firing in the middle for them, and they're not going to be they're definitely not going to be an easy beat. So really, get out early again would be nice, but yeah, definitely it won't be over until it's over. And as we're saying with changes, the team at the moment, if I don't know, is the list that we got in at the minute, is that a team that's ticking together, and you go, okay, you don't change that unless you absolutely have to, because everyone just seemed to tick.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably minimal changes. Highmore for Joyce maybe, but they might just sit there and go, well, Joyce hasn't done much wrong. We know that, Howard probably goes to King, and then you've got, Wilkie and Joyce and Webster to get the likes of Corbett and various others within that forward line. But yeah, that the game I think you were talking about, H, we'd just beaten Geelong. We were on top of the ladder. We were knocking on the door of the 8, and I think we played them at Metricon and we're down 37-1 at quarter time or something. It was ugly. A really frustrating loss at the time. But I think pound for pound, we've certainly probably still got more talent and a bit more depth, but they're an improving side. They're not the laughing stock Gold Coast of the past. They should win at least 8, possibly 10, maybe more games this year. They're not a bad side. They're pretty well coached. They've got a good spread of talent, but I actually enjoy the prospect of playing them during the day. I think when you get those dewy Queensland conditions, they've sort of played pretty well in those conditions over the journey. I think getting, especially a day game in May, it's a bit more comfortable. It's not as sticky. It might be 22 or something like that. It just feels like that would be a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more maybe Melbourne-like in a way. So, I like the prospect of playing them in a day game. And I think we're reasonably well placed. As I said, it won't be easy because they're a handy side, but I still believe pound for pound, it's a game we should win. But yeah, I certainly don't think it'll be easy. We're not going to be up 6 goals to zip or whatever we were against Hawthorn. It'll be more of an arm wrestle than that.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where I think there's a really fine line between being confident and being arrogant. And we've shown what we can do in patches. That round one we kind of ground out that a really tough fought win in the wet in Sydney. In the West Coast game, that second half was just unbelievable football. And this Hawthorn game, we showed for 4 quarters what we can do when we play our style of football, when we play our game. But you look at the other side and some of those other games, the Melbourne and Essendon games, it looked like we went into those games expecting to win off the back of last year's performances and some of the off-season, pre-season expectations. Maybe we just kind of rocked up expecting to just win. Didn't have to work as hard, didn't have to try as hard, and we know how that panned out. So. If we go into this game with the same mindset, same mentality as we did against Hawthorn, that we've got to be on from the first whistle, the first bounce, then we're a real shot at winning this game, and we should go into the game confident because we know that our best is good enough to match it with almost anyone. But on the other side, if we go into this game arrogant, we're better than these guys, and we don't have to work as hard, and if we turn up only 90% or 85% of who we are and what we do, then that's real trouble for us. And I think the coaching staff and Rats and the guys have a task on their hands this week to ensure that we go into this game with the same mindset and the same mentality and the same energy as we did come into the Hawthorn game.
Just looking at the forecast, it's actually going to be the best day on the Gold Coast on Saturday in the whole week, and it's actually quite wet at the moment. And come Saturday, it's going to be 26 sunny and no wind. So it looks like
Haven't got a
perfect
predicted
conditions for a
humidity
game.
reading or anything. Yeah.
No, doesn't give me that much. But yeah, perfect conditions for a game. So it's going to be
26 a little on the warm side, but it's not too bad. I think most people, if you're going to go to Queensland this time of year, is not a bad time to go. So.
No excuses for poor skills. That's going to be the
That's
key
right.
of the day there.
That's right, and I can't remember them playing a lot of day games there recently. They've generally, their home games are Saturday night games or twilight games. So yeah, it's not conditions that they, or the time of day that they play that often. So yeah, fingers crossed that it goes the right way.
H, you mentioned that skill level, and I think that's certainly something that we can still improve on. Obviously, it was a pretty good performance last week against Hawthorn, but it wasn't perfect by any means. And you look at our efficiency inside 50, I think we only went at 50%, which is probably still our highest mark for the season so far. But there's clearly still improvements to be made. And you're right, in these sorts of conditions that we're expecting on Saturday afternoon, up on the Gold Coast, there really is no excuse for poor skill errors. And if we go into the game, we play our style of footy, our brand of football, and we'll have plenty of opportunity to win the ball, play hard and tough, but to move the ball quickly and hit targets. And if we do that, then we're a real good shot.
And definitely be nice to win the Battle of the Kings. That would be the good thing. I'd be interested to see whether we're actually going to get a shootout between them at some point. Whether there's going to be a perfect day for taking these big marks, and his kicking is going to be the thing that, because we've seen Ben's a beautiful kick.
Mm-hmm.
We know, and Max, we've been told, is a beautiful kick, but he just seems to be struggling just a little bit. So he gets it online, and what was it last week? 2-4 last week. Should have kicked 5, even 6. It didn't really have any difficult shots. The one on the run, if they'd gone through, that would have been magnificent. Another crumbing, tall forward goal, which he's going to put some of these through, and he's going to get
top of the post.
nominations for goals of the week, and so we know he can do it on the ground. We know he can do it in the air, but just these set shots, get them right, and you got an all-round player who's really going to take us far.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we look forward to, that and several other things as well. We look like we turned a corner on Saturday. Obviously, that needs to be confirmed with another performance. So hopefully when we reconvene next week, we're back on an even keel and we feel that we have resurrected the season somewhat. So wherever you may be watching it, for those that are heading up to Queensland, and for those, obviously last year we developed quite the Queensland family, and we spoke to a couple of members of the Queensland Saints family. So hopefully they get along and enjoy their first game of the year, having been sort of spoiled a bit in 2020. They'll enjoy getting along to another one in 2021. And for those watching it wherever you are in Melbourne, fingers crossed for a good result, and go Saints again, looking to this week against the Suns.